In today's global economy, quality matters. Benjamin Franklin once quipped, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." Quality Matters is here to talk about all things quality. So whether you're looking to improve your business, getting ready for an audit, or dealing with failed inspections, tune in, check us out, then get back to doing work that matters.
Recording already?
Oh yeah.
This whole time. He does this every time when I don't. I was talking about checking my grocery list one time, and he included in the bloopers at the end.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Quality Matters. I'm Darcy.
I'm Kyle.
Today we have a special guest for you. We have Christopher Paris. Say hi.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
He is the founder of Oxbridge Quality Resources International, an ISO 9001 and AS 9100 consulting firm. He also reports on issues related to the ISO standards development process and the accredited certification scheme. I think we're going to get into that. Acting as an unofficial watchdog for the industry. His clients have included Northrop Grumman, NASA, and SpaceX.
Very cool for me.
Kyle was very excited to read that. He likes NASA and SpaceX.
That was my childhood dream. Was I was going to work for NASA someday, and I came real close to actually getting a contract with them last year, but government shutdown happened, and there's a big change up, and everyone's roles after, and I can't talk that one out.
Yeah, that's too bad. That would have been a cool gig, but it might come back.
It might.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be patient. Figured, we waited 30-something years to get that phone call. I can wait a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I've got Kyle and Chris here. We were just talking about their competitors a little bit, but not really, because there's enough business out there that they can both be consultants and we can still be friends.
Yes,
that's right.
And today I know they want to talk about the problems facing the ISO certification scheme and the ISO standards development process. So again, I think I'm going to kind of step back. I'll ask questions if I have questions, which may be often, but you guys go at it.
Yeah, so we first kind of got in touch when Darcy and I shared the podcast about the ITC plant explosion. And so I think you'd commented on that article, and that's kind of how we got in touch. And I'm really fascinated with some of the work they have out there, because being in the industry for a while, this is something I've seen, is that not all certifying bodies are created equal.
Yeah.
And some of them are pretty happy to just issue a cert, and it's a really piss poor audit. Yeah. And it seems like this is a lot of the realm that you kind of like to review and critique.
Yeah, and all that came about by accident. I never planned to be the guy that I am now in this role. I started in this in '99, and it had already been working. I started as a consultant in '99, but it had already been working for about 10 years. My first implementation was in '89. So the standard was only like a year old, less than a year old, right? Wow. So I've been working on it. And I really drank the Kool-Aid, and I thought ISO was the greatest thing, and actually made a career choice not to go back to school and get a chemistry degree, and instead pursue this, which now in retrospect was a really, really bad idea. Yeah. So it is what it is, and now I'm stuck. But and then slowly over time, I did, started building up clients and started getting interested to go on the standards committees, and started participating in the TAG 176, the RIGHTS, the ISO standard, and ASQ. And I started asking naive questions, really, really naive questions. And then the reactions I was getting were a mix of like shock and horror and anger. And I couldn't figure it out. And to be honest with you, I'm still kind of mystified by some of it too. It's just irrational. But and then that led to me starting to continue to ask those questions, and now I'm the only guy asking them. So the only reason that I'm at all have a role in this industry that I do, like a whistleblower or watchdog, is simply because no one else is doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm just filling a vacuum, and I'm glad to give up that vacuum if somebody else wants to take it over, because it's too much stress.
So what are you whistleblowing? Are you looking at the standards that they're maybe not exactly accurate, or are you focusing more on the certifying bodies?
So there's two angles of attack, and now I call them angles of attack because there's an actual plan, there's a strategy, there's a long game that's playing out here. It's no longer me just making it up as I go along. Now there's an actual there's a chessboard that's being played out, and I'm 10 moves ahead. But it's two problems simultaneously. One is the problems with how the standards are made, which is unfair to standards users. The ISO standard in particular is intentionally complicated and intentionally big to increase the page count, which increases the cost because ISO is a publishing company and they have to make money. And it's intentionally complicated because the guys who wrote it are the consultants who then sell the services to decipher it. And the other problem is the accredited certification scheme, is the fact that they're giving these certs away like water, like candy to everybody. Everybody passes now, nobody fails.
Yep.
And then that's one problem. But even after a company is found to have done really, really bad things, whether it's accidentally released defective product or intentionally, or committed crimes, the certification bodies continue to give them the cert, and they retain their certification. And for now, I'm the only guy asking these questions and reporting on it.
Well, again, you having all this really, really fascinating for me because before we got in contact, I was talking to a CNC machine company here locally, and they were looking at getting their ISO certification moved over to a new registrar, and I was kind of taken aback because I've never heard of someone actively choosing to switch, midstream. And it's not even they were switching at the next certification round. There was total midstream switch. And so it turns out that there had been some bribery with the previous quality manager and the auditor there. And then they found that this went up the chain a little ways. And so they had a, series of audit reports that were just totally worthless.
I want all the details.
off air.
Yeah.
We'll get all the details.
Tell me more.
And, I've run into this same certifying body elsewhere. And each time that I've run into them, I am just totally taken aback that this company is certified. Because this is me coming in from the perspective of a consultant or a second-party auditor. And so I'm just staring at the work, and it's just, I'm dumbfounded that an auditor put their name next to this certification. I would not put my name next to that. Right. And so I started running into stuff like that. But previously, when I first started working in quality, I kind of got tossed in. I was the IT guy at my company. And so they're like, hey, we need quality program and health and safety, environmental stuff. You're smart. Go do it. That's pretty much how it worked. And so I started doing it and I started looking at getting us certified. And so a consultant that we had loosely used also worked for a certifying body, which I thought was kind of odd to begin with, but I didn't really know much better at the time. And so he said, well, I can't be your auditor, but someone else can. I was like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. So give me a quote. And simultaneously, I was getting quotes from other places too, because it's a smart thing to do. And they were half the price, and they were going to audit less days. I'm just kind of scratching my head like this doesn't compute. How can you be so much cheaper and do it so much faster than anyone else? So I asked them to send me their certificate, and total bull crap. I mean, absolutely. I looked up the cert, the registrar didn't check out. The website for the registrar that supposedly accredited them was developed by Network Solutions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this isn't right. And later, 2 or 3 years later, I found out that they got sued and they folded, and it was all a lie.
Well, I think that's where it comes in, like you were saying earlier. It's so big, and a lot of people don't know to not trust certifying bodies.
So that would have been a certificate mill, right? That's what we call, I coined the phrase years ago, certificate mill, to represent, it's sort of like a diploma mill. You can get your university diploma on the internet. That's how I got my medical degree. And I'll be offering free surgery to anybody who's interested.
I think I'm going to pass on that one.
Yeah, and I'm also a lawyer and a plumber. But we have these companies that are unaccredited, and they're issuing certificates, and they're for $500 you can buy one.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I think you encountered.
Yeah,
right?
effectively. And now it turns out that they actually had consultants on hand that would loosely give you some advice and tell you what to do, and they had some auditors that would halfway audit you, but just enough to feel like you got something for the money?
Well, there's a very, very large organization. I won't name it unless you want me to, but it's the most sophisticated certificate mill operation in the world. Mm-hmm. They're out of the UK, but they operate in the United States, and they certified a heroin smuggling ring with ISO 9000. And they're very upset that I reported on this. And so the British press broke the news that this company had been smuggling heroin inside furniture, and that the company was a front. The owners were arrested and they're in prison. So this is a fact. This is went through the courts. They were arrested, convicted, and imprisoned. And yet they boasted an ISO certificate, and then I was the one who broke the story on who issued the certificate.
Wow.
The company is connected with another organization, which I can name. It's a reputable organization, the British Quality Foundation, and the British Quality Foundation had awarded this certificate mill its annual award for a couple years running, and the British Quality Foundation has as its patron the Princess of England, the daughter of the Queen of England, Princess Anne.
Oh, wow.
And so this was traceable back to them, and I contacted the princess and her spokesperson and said, the princess's name is kind of tied up in this because they're, all this is... And they were trying to take some action. They were not happy about this, that
oh my God,
this certificate mill, very prominent, had issued an ISO cert to a heroin smuggling ring. But they don't care who they issue it to. So clearly there was never an audit done.
Right.
It was just, somebody paid the money and they gave them.
Yeah.
And I think recently the website finally got shut down, but even after these people had been convicted and put in prison, they were still advertising their ISO cert.
Oh, wow.
So, or alternatively, let's give them fair time. The other argument is that the heroin was really good. Okay, that also is a possibility.
Or is well hidden.
Yeah.
Is well hidden.
Oh, man.
They did a very good job of smuggling.
Now, one thing I run into a lot is folks say, well, we don't want it to be ISO certified, we just want to be compliant. And this is one of the reasons people throw the compliance argument out there. I always object to the compliance argument because I've never actually seen a company that boasted they were ISO compliant that had a system that was worth anything. What's your kind of take on that this is the way that some people feel about the industry?
I see less of that now. I used to see more of that. I'm seeing less now. The majority of my clients are coming to me and they pursue certification, and 90% of them are pursuing it because the customer told them they had to do it. So they're mandated. The client I happen to be working with in Texas right now is a rare outlier where they're pursuing it because they want to. It's interesting, but that's an outlier. And I see less of the just declare compliance. The ones who are going to pursue compliance, they just self-declare. Mm-hmm. They don't even hire a consultant. So if you have somebody who's willing to spend money on a consultant, that's not terrible. That means that they're putting some money into it. They got some skin in the game. So that's cool. But I don't know. I'm mixed because I don't think that self-declaration is a good thing. I can tell you I'm a genius, and I am. But that doesn't mean I am. But
and a doctor and a lawyer.
Yeah, but I really am a genius. No. But self-declaration doesn't really mean anything. So I think they should pursue certification. But now I'm so deep into the conflicts and corruption in the certificate. We have to fix the certification scheme because it is just really, really bad. So not so sure now. If they can get away with self-declaring and their customers are happy, and if they're happy and if they really are compliant, they're not faking, then I guess that's cool.
Yeah.
But if they're faking it, no, they should either quit or get certified.
No, I agree with that. What about registrars, different certifying bodies? Is it so much of a difference in the certifying body, or maybe the country they're operating from, or the auditors that they've got? What really, in your experience, because you obviously know way more about this side of things than I do, what's the distinguishing factor? How do you know if it's good or not when you're going for certification?
So my studies and work has been primarily focused on the United States, the UK, and a few other countries. I'm delving more into India. India is admittedly a nightmare. It really is. And I've been writing. I'm going to have some more articles coming out on that. That they just can't seem to control it. The government's lost control, and China's bad. China's really bad. The government there is in control, and they're just printing fake certificates.
Question I was going to ask.
But within the United States and the unfortunate thing that I found is it's relatively consistent. It almost doesn't matter which registrar. They're all operating in non-compliance with the accreditation rules.
Okay.
And they're getting away with it. And that's because of the financial structure of how this scheme works. The client pays their auditor, right, the registrar. The registrar pays their accreditation body, and the accreditation body pays some fees to the IAF, which is the overseeing body of all of this. And so everybody's paying their own traffic cop, and therefore you can't get honest policing because the people at the top have the most financial skin in the game. They have the most to lose, so they have the least incentive to carry out their official responsibilities, and so they just don't.
Yeah,
they completely don't, and it's a real shame. So it allows the registrars to pretty much do whatever they want, and they do. I mean, they just... Now, you have a few out there that are okay. And I always say it's just like you're choosing which medieval dentist you want, you know? They're all going to be terrible, but maybe one's less terrible than the other.
Yeah.
And I think that what it's come down to now, the best approach to select a registrar is to find the auditor that you like, the individual, that man or woman that you can work with. The problem there is that clients mistake that for the guy who's easiest. And that results in the problem we have where companies who don't deserve ISO get ISO, and then they kill people with defective products. That's not what I mean. Right. I mean, I want that guy or girl who's going to come in here and beat me up, tell me the honest truth, but also don't consult. Don't consult during the audit. They're not allowed to do that, and 100% of them do. Don't do that. But if you've got a legitimate finding, tell me what it is, and then I could fix it, and that's gold.
Right.
But it's a tough.
No, it is, and I can speak to that because I do some of the third-party audits and the not
Sorry
consulting.
to hear that. I did not know that.
Yeah, not
Why
consulting
did I not?
during
I should have burst into flames when I walked in here. Then it's like a vampire going to church.
No, well, maybe we can have some of these conversations offline. But I'm real particular about who I audit with, and this is part of it. Is some of it's just I'm giving you my audit. And I'm going to do it almost to my standard, document it the way that they want it documented, but I'm going to give you a good audit. But that do not consult piece, that is the single hardest part. Because when you've got that quality manager who's only been in the job 6 months, sitting there squirming, and he doesn't know what to do, and you just got to keep quiet and say, well, you need to fix it. That is the hardest thing to do. But no, the third-party audits are they're a totally different ballgame. And part of the problem that I've run into with conducting them is I obviously get to see what the last auditor did. And the quality of audit between the auditors varies so much. And I'm sure I'm part of that variation because there's so little standard about how I'm supposed to audit.
Yeah.
And I had that problem when I first started with one of them, is they wanted me to do like these 17 hours of e-learnings where I'm watching some goofy video and a PowerPoint. And I'm sitting there thinking like, this is just an absolute waste of my time. So they had me do a witness audit, but they were, maybe not the what I'd expected them to be.
Now, you were being witnessed, or you were witnessed?
Yeah, being witnessed. Yeah. And so that's at least a decent step in the process. But I've been approached by other registrars whom I've just outright said no to, that no, we'll not audit for you. Because I've run across their audits, and it's really ridiculous, the stuff that they pass. And it's as if, every corrective action gets approved, and the requirement for evidence to prove that it was effective it's just not there.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting. So I have, most of the time, the problem I'm seeing is that clients are passing, and now they're passing with zero nonconformities. That's a new trend. Everybody seems to be reporting that, we got zero nonconformities. That's a problem. But then we saw recently this other problem where I had a client that approached me. They were not one of my previous clients. Mm-hmm. They were certified for years, and I know who their auditor was, and he's a lightweight. And they didn't have many nonconformities. They had 1 year where they had a major, and they closed it.
Right.
And this was AS 9100 for aerospace, and so and then they switched auditors, and the new auditor came in, and he wrote up 23 nonconformities with now I'm going to forget the number, but 14 majors. And how do you go from zero to that?
Right.
right? And how do you even have 14 majors? Because there's only how many clauses of the standard. So, and but the registrar dug in. They're not budging. They are claiming it was a. Now I believe the auditor doesn't work there anymore, so something went on behind the scenes.
Right.
But so the client had to clean that up and then fired him and got a different registrar.
Well, I've done that before.
That's wildly inconsistent.
Yeah,
something's wrong.
I've left with more than 20 findings, and people are just sitting there, their eyes popping out of their sockets at the closing meeting. Of course, we've been going through the whole time, but the zero non-conformity you talk about, it's
well, we do a deep dive audit thing where it'll be 2 people going in, even if it's a small company or a medium-sized company. We just spend a week there, so you're talking like 10 man days of auditing, and in those we come away with easily over 100. Over 100, but that's where the client, again, I'm not a registrar. Right. They want us. They say write up everything.
Yep.
And we do that. And some of the companies, some of these are really, really serious. And when you come away, let's say that a third of them are serious, of 30-something nonconformities that are really serious. And then you look at their registrar audits, and year after year they got nothing. And then they look at me like, well, why didn't he find that? The registrar, I said, I don't know. Because your check cleared. That's why.
Yeah. No, I get it. I see it with other folks that I've audited with, and I have to fear myself is, if I hit them with too many findings, and I don't really care much because I'm not relying on the income, but if I hit them with too many findings, how many complaints, how many challenges to my findings are they going to have for the registrar just says, hey, we just won't ask you to audit no more.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is the scheme helps the lowest common denominator succeed. The auditors who are going to not write up anything get good reviews from clients, and then they succeed. The ones who are going out and maybe doing an honest job and beating them up with honest findings don't get those, and so that's a problem. And then you have the other extreme where a guy comes in and he writes up 23. I don't know. And in that case, the guy was literally had the client crying. They were literally, he was so abusive that they were actually sobbing during the audit and shaking. Wow. And it was, and that was an ANAB witness audit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know what ANAB was doing during that part of it, but maybe they did something behind the scenes. I'm assuming they did, because they probably did. They're not going to resolve that in front of anybody. But but you do have that other, but that's rare. The common thing now is drive-by audits. The auditor comes in, puts on a show and down. You get a couple findings. They make it sound like it's the end of the world. They do a whole lot of consulting on the side. They say, "I'm not going to write this up, so you write it up," which is code for I don't want a record of what I'm about to tell you.
Yep.
And everybody passes. And then later, that company is found to have sold, like Takata airbags. They turn into hand grenades and blow off your face. How did they get ISO certified? The Deepwater Horizon rig blew up and killed 11 people, and worst man-made natural, environmental disaster in human history. How did they have ISO? These organizations, that shouldn't happen.
No.
And in the many cases where these disasters happen, and then the next year the auditor goes in and gives them a cert again.
Yeah.
What? That should not be the case.
Yeah.
But see, that responsibility, I've not heard that from anyone else. I've not heard that from other auditors that I've worked with. No one sees that responsibility in the job that they do. It's just, I'm here to do the audit.
Yeah.
And no, you are here to certify for tens of thousands of people that this company is going to provide something that works properly and safely.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
So registrars all offer the identical same service, right? They're supposed to come in, audit, and issue findings, and either grant a certificate or take a cert away. It's the only thing they're accredited for, and it's identical. So if you're in a business where everybody's doing the same thing, how do you market yourself through a differentiator? How do you make yourself, what I do is different? And so what all the auditors started doing was they started to use the term value add. We're a value added registrar. And now it's become a joke because it's kind of like the Japanese teen thing. Japanese teens, everybody in Japan obviously has dark hair, and so the Japanese teens started to rebel by dyeing their hair, and they dye it like this orange blonde color. Well, now all the Japanese teens have orange blonde hair, and they're all the same. They're not unique anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with the registrars. They're all. I think I did a study, and it was almost like almost every single registrar operating in the U.S. has the word value add on their website.
Really?
And they do that by suggesting that, we're going to wink, wink, consult, all right? And that's that's kind of a problem. And, that was my point. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing that I'd like your opinion on this, is a couple of registrars I've talked to, sometimes the sales guys have consultants that they'll recommend folks to go to. And I can see how there could be conflict of interest there. I can also see how it could be...
or in my case, where the sales guy says, don't hire Chris. And if you hire Oxbridge, you're going to have problems, and that happens. So,
well, I could see it going the other way, though, to build confidence in some of these registrars, because if they have some consultants that they can recommend to, where there's no money being exchanged between the two, just kind of trusting goodwill, which I know is not the best way to do business, but it can help. In any case, to where you've got someone that's tough coming in to do your internal audit, you've got someone that's tough coming in to do the consultation work. Now your third-party auditor, who has to be objective, can truly be objective, because there's some support elsewhere to help these folks out. Because I think that's part of a fear as a third-party auditors. I'm going to hit them with these findings, and they ain't got a clue how to fix it.
Yeah, that's true. That shouldn't be their worry, though. The auditor should just write the findings and leave. And if it means taking the cert away, it means taking the cert away. I mean, that's the thing that registrars don't want to do. If they take a cert away, they lose money.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So if I've got a client who's certified and they're not certified tomorrow, then there's the likelihood they're just going to let their cert lapse, and now they're not paying that registrar anymore.
Yep.
So nobody wants to do that, and that's why suspensions and controls are very low.
I had that happen once. I went to do the audit, and they were just absolutely not prepared. Just hadn't done anything. Apparently, their quality manager quit a couple of months ago, fired somewhere in between. I didn't really stick around long enough to find out. And so I called up, my contact and said, hey, look, they have nothing. I said, and we went through the list of all the records I tried to gather in that first hour, and there's nothing there. She's like, well, see if you can put an audit report together. I'm like, how am I going to put an audit report together? So I sent a one-page audit report back that said could not audit anything.
Yeah.
Signed it, and that was it. But no one was prepared for that, which I found very interesting. I would think that would happen often enough that they would be like, okay, well, here's the procedure you need to follow since you can't complete the audit.
So I worked for a registrar in the early days for about 10 minutes, and I didn't continue it for two reasons. One is you can't consult, and I had a hard time turning that button off.
Hard.
Right?
Yeah.
It really is hard.
Real hard.
It is hard, but you have to do it. But you can't. So I just didn't like it because I would give bad news. But also the first two companies that I did were both major nonconformities within the first 10 minutes. I walked in the door, and the first company had done no internal audits. So it's simple, right?
Yeah.
The second company, I walked out, and we walked the plant floor, and we found some 400 uncontrolled documents, literally 400. Some of them were written in pencil and everything. And I even gave them an opportunity. I said, well, are these old? Maybe they're not being used anymore. And they said, no, we're using them. Instant major. And they both had hired consultants, but the consultants were new and they were newbies, and I felt terrible about it. And that was it. I came away from those experiences feeling really terrible. And I said, I don't think I want to do that part. Plus, the pay's not that good. The consulting gig's better. The auditing is good to fill the time, but I don't want to do it. So, but I know that feeling of going in and writing in the first 5 minutes. They have nothing. And what do you do?
And you do. You don't need to spend 4 days to know what the audit's going to be like.
Yeah.
It's just we're filling in the details as we go by.
Yeah. The problem is you're scheduled at that point. What do you do?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're going to have to wrap up pretty quick. But before we do, I want to ask you, you say you have a long game plan. Can that be revealed?
Yeah, sure.
What are you thinking?
The plan is, it's not a secret or anything. It's I can only deal with it in the United States because I can't be in more than one country at once. But the plan is to twofold. The CEO of ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, which basically oversees both the certification scheme and the development of standards in the United States.
Right.
He testified before the U.S. Congress, the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, that everything was cool. I want that committee to recall him and ask him pointed questions on how all these companies can be redoing things that are killing people and still be certified thereafter. And then as a bonus, I think I need to go and testify myself and to provide them this, we have now 80 active investigations or closed investigations in cases where a certified company was involved in a crime or released a deadly product or something like that, and 80 of them. And now, not all of those are traceable in the United States, but 3/4 of those are all ANSI linked somehow. And I think Congress needs to have that information. And then at that point, I would recommend to Congress that we have we take a pause and we call for a 10-year moratorium on requiring ISO or AS or any of these certs in any government contract. And then that will continue, be extended for 5 years every time until either ANSI gets its act together, or if ANSI cannot get its act together, then we have to take ANSI's role away from it and give it to someone else, possibly NIST or somebody like that. Makes sense. The way to starve the beast would be the way to get attention. Once ANSI and the various accreditation bodies and registrars stop getting work, then I think they'll clean up their house.
That's usually how it works.
Yeah.
I have one last question before we go, because especially after this conversation, if folks listening might be curious about this. How do you know if a registration or a certifying body is any good? How would you go about selecting someone? You know, the customer is requiring you have to get it. So if you want to continue working and operating, what would someone go look for when they're shopping?
It really is. You're asking the wrong guy. It's really a tough question, and everybody has their opinion. Like, oh, I know this registrar, I really like them, but then you'll get the bad auditor from that registrar, right? I don't know. I think it's Russian roulette. It is. If you happen to know, maybe ask around, and if you have another company says, yeah, I know a guy and he's pretty good, then that individual auditor, then hire that company maybe.
Gotcha.
But it's Russian roulette. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, unfortunately.
No, and even if the other company recommends them, it's like you said, it could have just been because the auditor was super easy and found zero nonconformities.
Right.
So you don't know that you're getting a valid audit.
Well, that kind of goes along with what I've said before, that some of the CBs are maybe better than others, but a lot of it depends on the auditor, and you really need to, in my opinion, interview the auditor before you agree to have them come out and certify your product.
Right.
And if you're a company that truly cares about quality, you're going to ask the tough questions of the auditor as well.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, but I'm available on Thursday nights for surgery.
Sounds good.
Pretty much any part of the body, I can do it. That's what my degree says.
The plumbing,
plumbing and surgery is all the same thing.
Yeah.
It really is connected.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So are we competitors here?
Probably.
You're an ISO 9001 consulting firm.
Yeah, but
it's such a big market that it's...
That's been my theory.
Like,
I never would attack competitors, because I always said there's enough work out there that you and I could be working, our children, our grandchildren, and we'll never bump into each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only reason I started pecking at some consultants now is because basically they're thieves. And so I finally bumped into them, and
That's
there we go.
That's kind of been my consensus. Now, when it comes to the software side of things that we also do, there's I wouldn't say a little less room, but there's far fewer folks that offer software, and far fewer folks that want it. So it's a little different game there.
If you're nice to people, it comes back.
Good karma.
I
If
agree.
you're not, sometimes it's not.
All right,
Okay,
Kyle
so what do we
does
do?
have one rule for today, because I think we're going to talk bad about some certifying bodies.
Just want to try to avoid using too many names.
No, we don't have to name names.
Okay.
I don't think. You can always beat me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Have you done that yet?
No, that would be
So
fun.
I'll try to not swear.
That's not bad. That's happened. We don't.
No,
we don't prohibit
We're
that.
technically clean, but iTunes gives you a lot of freedom within that clean lyrics realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not. Yeah. You'll see. So this is where I'm speaking.
Yeah, and it should be picking up fine. You don't have to talk directly to it, just as long as it's generally there.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready?
I think we're ready.
Are you